All right, today we're going to be looking behind the scenes on a project that I recently worked on that has to do with using Google Sheets to automatically scrape a website and feed that data into Data Studio. To give a little context to how this project got started and what the data we're looking at is, we'll start by showing you sort of the end product, which is this dashboard in Data Studio. And what we're looking at here is wildfire data for Colorado. And this year we've had quite a few large wildfires that had pretty big impact to communities. So as I was looking on the web at the information about it and seeing what's going on, I realized that the main incident website called InciWeb only showed me the most recent information. And I was really curious about how that was changing day over day and over time and what that meant for the progress of the fire growing and the containment of that fire. So what we see here is some basic information about the fire up top, and we have some day-to-day comparisons about the change in the three main metrics that we have out of this data, which is the size in acres, the total personnel, and the perimeter contained. And then as we go down, we can add other elements, but the crux of it is seeing that change through these time series charts here. And then also there's a lot of narrative that's around it. So the deeper and deeper you get into it and the more interested you get into it, it's useful to see kind of what's changing day over day. We have all of that listed out in this narrative. So what does this look like to begin with? On the web, what it looks like is a page like this with a lot of narrative and then this incident information down here. Now what I realized was this incident information is all in nice HTML tables. And Google Sheets has a nice function called import HTML, which would allow me to grab this information easily right into Sheets with essentially no code, just a function. So what I did was I started backing into this idea saying, can I grab this data? And then how can I sort of build this out to make this automatic and capture the data into a nice clean table every day? So when I dug into the site more, I realized there's this nice list of all the incidents. So this was also a nice HTML table. So I thought, okay, I can grab this table too, and then I can use that to filter down to the fires that I'm looking at in Colorado. And then there's also these fire incident names are also hyperlinks, so I can grab the URL from that and use that to pull the rest of the data from this page. So that's what we're going to get into. We're going to get into how we pulled that all through in Sheets. So let's jump over to our sheet right now. And what we're seeing now is the same table that I just showed you from the InciWeb website, which is this table. So what we do here to grab this is we just do a basic import HTML. There's one table on the page, so we put the URL, we put table 1, and that pulls that data in. Now I had to do a little bit extra to get the URL that's actually attached to that incident name out too, but it lines up, and what we can do now is grab all of that whole row and start to identify the fires that we want to pull out. So we have this master list, and I decided to keep this in here because as I share this, if you wish to use this as well, if you wish to play with it, then you can use the next step to query down to maybe the states that you're interested in, or you can just pull everything if you really want to. So to just pull Colorado, what we did was we go to this recent updates for Colorado only. And I wrote a query based on that raw full list that we pulled, and I said I only want to see the ones that say Colorado, USA. And then I also noticed that the update date wasn't always a date. It's a text field, and it just tells you how long ago it was updated. And I started looking at that over time, and I realized that it would say, minutes, hours, days ago until it got to 7 days, and then it would start using the date. So I thought, well, if I'm going to pull this every day, I don't need to pull it if there's not an update. So I used the rest of this query to basically identify, does it say a date, or does it say, X ago? So in this case, I only want it to pull it if it said minutes or hours ago, because if it said days ago, that means I would have already pulled it. So we kind of incorporated that query logic in there to really only show me the ones that had an update in the last 24 hours. So from here, what we're really looking to do is grab this URL and do another import HTML. And what we'll do is we'll grab this first one, we'll copy it, and I'll kind of show you how I backed into this. So let's go over to this individual tab, which is my way of saying I want to look at the individual data for this incident. So if I were to take what I just copied and paste it right here, I'm using the rest of this with a formula to say, look up the information on this URL and put it in a nice flat line. So this would be a row item in our data, in our final data set. So what we're actually seeing here is a lookup in this column to pull out and put all the rest of the information out there. Now, what this is actually doing is looking up from a different table where it really gets into the nitty-gritty of how the data is coming from the website. So let's go to that lookup table real quick and then we'll bounce back. So the lookup table is, again, using this active link and using a series of import HTML functions to grab all of the data that we see listed on the site. So this translates to this. And what we're seeing here is 1, 2, 3, 4 tables. Now, something I realized was, and the reason why this is so long is because I couldn't just combine all of the tables and say import table 1, import table 2, 3, 4, etc. because sometimes when the fires were really small or dying down or only popped up quickly, we didn't have all the tables on those pages. So if I brought in all the tables, I would get an error thrown that says there's no table 3, there's no table 4. So there's some error handling in here to say, if you have 3 and 4, show them. If not, basically, just show the first 2. So in this case, we have all the tables, and we used this import HTML with that error handling with the transpose function to do it a nice vertical list, so that way it's easier to look up. So here I have all the field names, and here I have all the data for those field names, which makes it nice and easy for on this individual page to just do a quick, easy VLOOKUP. I'm saying I want to look up these field names on my lookup table, and then boom, all the information gets thrown out there. So that's kind of the heavy lift of grabbing the data. Now, I could sit here and do this manually. I could put the next one in. I can copy and paste it to my final data set. So this would be our final data set, which is just all the data listed out over time with the date and time grabbed. But that would make it cumbersome for me to upkeep, and just not be very fun to do every day. So what we can do is use app scripts to iterate through the list of the fires we want to look at, grab this link in this line of data, paste it in here to pull the data in, and then grab all of it nice and clean and drop it into our final location to make it permanent. So everything in here is a copy paste. It's permanent. It's not any dynamic formula like this is. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So now here we are in the app scripts for this project, and it's actually quite simple. And if you're not familiar with app scripts, that's okay. This will be in the description, and you can grab it and kind of play around and look at it yourself if you want to. But essentially what we're doing up here is just defining all the fields that we need. The crux of it is right here, which is basically just saying, I want to iterate through my list. And when I do, I want to grab the first row. I want to put that into my range that's going to look up all the information. And then I'm going to grab that range and push it into my final data set. So essentially what we're doing is automating the very mundane task of saying, I have to copy paste a few times and I have to do it for everything in this list. So we're just going to, if I explain that through the data set here, what we're going to do is we're going to start at the top, we're going to iterate through this list, and one by one, it's automatically going to take this, grab, copy paste here so that we get a nice clean row, and then it's just going to copy paste that whole row and put it at the bottom of our permanent data set. Now I know I might get some grief from people about doing it this way because you could do a lot of that just in app scripts. And the reason why I don't like to do that is because I like to leverage the resources for what they're really good at. So Sheets can do most of this, and the only thing you have to worry about coding is iterating through a list and, again, that mundane task of copy and pasting. So I actually like to illustrate that because I think it's easier to hand off to people too, and it's more visual for people to understand and see the power of just sheets alone. So the final part of this is I have this app scripts now, and if I ran it, it would go through and it would pull all the new data. I don't want to have to run it every day, so we want to go up here and look at our project triggers. So our project trigger is just saying, I want this to run at a certain time every day, every month, whenever you make a change, whatever criteria you need it to do. So in this case, we're doing it on a time schedule. So we're saying, I want to run the function, which is the app script that I created called Fire Data Scrape. I'm going to do it time driven. I want to do it daily, and then I'm just going to pick an interval of when I want to do it. So I noticed that it was updated roughly in the morning, was the big update every day. So I just said between 8 and 9. This ends up running around 8:23 almost every day. So now everything is set up and there's no maintenance on it. I just have this run and the data falls into this final table. And this final table is what's tied to Data Studio. So now every day I can refresh this between 8 and 9 and new data would be on there. So that's pretty much it. This is the high-level concept of how you can take a website that has some nice HTML assets, grab that information into Sheets, and automate it so you can get it into Data Studio and see that data evolve over time. It's especially good in this use case because the website was only showing us the most recent information, but there's other ways you can do this to capture information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the spreadsheet, I'm going to take this Data Studio dashboard, I'm going to put links in the description so you can take copies of those if you want. And then what you can do is you can take the dashboard and you can link it to your copy of the Fire data. You can then just play in Data Studio if that's something that you're interested in. Then you have a nice set of data that you can tinker with and move around, or you can get into that app script and change the query to maybe work on a state that you might be interested in, or change it to pull all the information. But it's kind of a nice framework for you to get playing with this concept of scrape the data, automate it straight out into a visualization.